Hey peeps, I had a quick thought. I don't think we talk about this enough in church, that Christian singles are actually a vulnerable people group when it comes to church. And I know it sounds super dramatic, but listen to why I'm saying this. When it comes to church, many times, just by nature of the type of messages that churches give, many times church is geared towards families, married couples. And I have seen time and time and again, well-intentioned churches, well-intentioned pastors would gear a lot of their messaging towards the family. And I think that's perfectly fine. Some churches are specifically sent to build up the family. Some churches are specifically designed so that they could build up single people. But rarely do I find churches that do a sufficient job of supporting both. And I think this is really dangerous because there are a lot of single Christians out there, and the needs are so specific and the needs are so real that if we're, first of all, not talking about them at all, or if we're sweeping them under a rug, or if we're just acting as though like, oh, it will work itself out in marriage. It's not. A lot of these single issues that people are having are trickling into marriage because they weren't resolved, right? And I think sometimes it really grieves me to hear married people who have forgotten just how hard singlehood was. And so they're like, oh, just hurry up and get married. Stop being so picky. And it's like, it's actually not that. It's so many things, especially now. I'm a single person who has a heart for singles because I know how difficult it is. I know how difficult dating can be, even when you meet fellow Christian people. It's not as straightforward as it was with our parents back in the day. Oh, you meet a Christian person, you're Christian, they're Christian, you find each other attractive. That's it. Boom, let's go. It's a little more nuanced than that now. And I feel like the longer you go as a single person into a certain part of your age, like once you're, I would say like the age of 30, something happens in your mind in many different levels. So I can only speak to my experience as a woman. As a woman, your body is like, oh, we're supposed to be creating children. And you know what that means. You know how you create children. You gotta do some things. So your mind is telling you, oh, it's time. It's time to start doing the things you ain't used to do, but your situation hasn't changed. But your mind and your body are in full-blown procreation mode. I would just say this because I think we're not having this conversation. And I was talking to the Lord about it to say, God, I really don't believe you designed people to be single and sexless past the age of 30. It's just not a thing that works well together. And I think like sometimes it's like, oh, my pearls, I'm not going to talk about that in church. So maybe the church building is not the place to have those conversations, but church people, Christian people should be talking about those things. And so I'm really fortunate that I have a community of people kind of all over the place from different churches and groups that I've been a part of that have these really transparent conversations with me about what it takes to stay pure in this world, what it takes to trust God with bringing your spouse, what it takes to repent and come back to yourself, to prepare your mind for marriage and for motherhood and all those things. We're assuming that those things would just come together, and I don't think they're organically coming together. If they ever did in the past, they're definitely not organically coming together now. It takes a little bit more intentionality. So I just feel like I wish we were having more and more of those conversations, and I always try to make myself available to fellow Christians to talk through some of those things that could be potentially awkward. Because I think we were created to be sexual beings. When my cousin and I were having this conversation, God is so interesting that he could have said, hey, in order to procreate, you just have to look at each other and wink one good time. And then that's how you get pregnant. But God was like, oh, we gonna make it a whole thing, right? It's gonna be fun. And he did that by design because he wanted marriage to be a thing that you enjoy, you partake in. And so what happens in our society when we delay marriage, we delay other great things that God has in store for us. And so in this instance, I will acknowledge that it's not just people not wanting to get married. I think that's an oversimplification of the issue. And I think it's really unfair to point it out like that, to say singles are just being pickier than usual, because that's really not it. I sincerely believe that there is a demonic block on marriages. And I've been telling the Lord, if he ever gives me the opportunity, I would be a matchmaker. Oh, I would be so irritating. First of all, I have this issue, and I'm ranting now, but I have this issue where I know some phenomenal Christian women. I don't know nearly as many Christian men. I know that they're out there, but they just don't run in my circles. So I would love to meet someone who had a circle of Christian guy friends, and I would just set up every one of my friends. I would have like a profile. I would be setting people up like, hey, what about this person? Like, I used to host all these like little get-togethers at my house just to get people together. My thing that I have now is like every event that I host is an estrogen fest, and it's just it's cute to know so many great women, but it's like, where are the men? Even just for friendship's sake, I think it is really important. Marriage aside, it's important as a single woman to have men friends. I think it's really weird to get one-sided view of the world and not know what men think about certain things. So this pandemic, we're going to have to bounce back socially in a really interesting way, because I think a lot of singles are isolated. A lot of singles are lonely. When you go to church and everyone goes back home with their own families, your friendship circle is dwindling also, because your friends, they're not becoming your friends anymore, but they have new obligations like family that you don't quite yet have in that same way. So you're available. And yes, like Paul says, you can dedicate yourself to ministry, which is great, which is what most of us have been doing. But that need for companionship and friendship is like a deep, deep need that doesn't really go away. And it is magnified in singlehood. So we have to be really intentional about that. Anyway, so yeah, God knows my heart. I would be such a great matchmaker. I love setting people up. I love love. I love friendship. I love hosting. So yeah, I'm praying that I would have the opportunity just to create new relationships for people, because I think people really are trying people are trying so hard, and the enemy is using the isolation and the discouragement to really take people out of the game. And it's scary. It's scary. Some people who have been like running very strong, like, are being taken out, and it's not easy. And you trust God, you love God, but it's very, very hard when you see people still being single into their like late 30s, into their 40s. God is faithful. He's going to do it. But sometimes you can need that additional encouragement. So I'm praying that God would help me to be an encouragement, not only to myself, but to my fellow Christian singles as well. Like it is a special mandate that I feel really burdened with. So we'll see what God does with that. That's all.